Hi, Jenny. Ah, I'll start video. Hi, Jenny. Can you hear me?
I need to turn on my volume.
Oh, that was it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Great. How was your latest trip?
I haven't been anyplace.
Well, wait, that was November.
Yeah,
Oh, God, sorry.
we've seen each other since then, haven't we? Didn't we have a December meeting?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I don't think you were around.
I was.
I thought you were in Mexico.
I still am.
Who has a job like that?
Um, a lot of people these days. It's called
Really?
hybrid living.
Hybrid living. Now it's hybrid cars and hybrid means now hybrid living.
Yep.
Gotcha. We got some great news today.
Yeah.
My son, which I've talked about, he's a physician in the Air Force. So he is coming back to the US and he was accepted at Johns Hopkins for more education internship. And they are the #1 school to go to for.
Oh, God, congratulations.
Yeah, so he is so excited. He's going into preventive medicine. And the person that went through this program about 2 years ago, she had to work with Dr. Fauci for her internship. So, you know, he's looking at staying back there, but this is really awesome. So
How impressive. I'm so happy for you. And God, these achieving children.
you know,
You did something right.
Yeah, this is a child that's always been like that. We just kind of took it in stride, you know. We didn't know he was unique, shall we say. We just thought, you know, yeah, that's Patrick, you know. So
Oh, and it's Patrick as well.
he's a Patrick.
I have 2 Patricks and a William Patrick.
Does that get confusing?
Well, one this Pat is Pat. The Pat, our son, is Patrick, and Williams is definitely William.
Yeah. Well, you know, when my son was in high school, SNL had Pat, who was the ambiguous Pat. He has this thing about being called Pat. It's Patrick, except mom can still call him Pat.
Yeah, I love the name Patrick. I don't love Pat, but it just fits Pat, my Pat, and it resolved the problem, so I get to say both.
Got it.
So any issues tonight that you know of?
David was getting his computer worked on today, so hopefully be able to join us. I think there's some concerns still in the parks plan.
Okay, good.
That 3.19, that's the one that Sharon put together. And
Oh, yeah. And I helped her. I mean, I did quite a bit of it.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure it wasn't, I mean, I totally would expect you to do editing and thinking and rewriting and everything else.
Yeah.
If this is being recorded to those people that are recording this, this is a private conversation and it's not going in the minutes whatsoever.
Oh, good point. You know, everybody's sick at City Hall. Our new planning assistant is sick.
Damn.
And Christy, and poor Chad's just got his head spinning, I think, because he's got Justine. He has one person.
Well, he said to me, Ray wrote the other day, he said 3 presumptive cases. So I don't know if those are other people with the city or what that was.
Well, presumptive means possibly Angelina, but she didn't know for sure, and maybe they don't know for sure.
I see.
And Christy.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we'll just muddle along, and thanks to experienced planning commissioners like you, make it easier. I think I have everything here, but I'm not too concerned, because, we can pull this off. And, I talked to Don Frank a little bit,
Yeah,
so he's ready, he's got a double hearing tonight and I think he's pretty comfortable.
yeah, yeah. Kevin Couples is retiring
Ah,
from City Society.
it is this time.
Well, he said he had some in the letter or whatever I read said personal matters, and I know he just got married. But
Wow.
when I was on the Seaside Planning Commission, I went visiting probably once a week as he explained things to me, because urban growth boundary was just like totally out of my, what are you talking about? And how we looked at things and all those issues that were basically new to me.
He's a good planning director. I'm sure he
Yeah.
guided you pretty well, the city well.
Well, you give Kevin something to talk about and 15 minutes later.
Ah,
But, my background was I built lots of houses and things like that, but I didn't understand all the variances, setbacks, and urban growth boundary and all that kind of stuff. So I really appreciated him.
wow. So there's a new opening.
Yeah, there you go.
That's going to be hard it's not easy to find planners for the coast.
No, and he's got shoes that he's been there a long time.
Yes.
The city of Seaside continues to have issues and people wanting to build places where maybe they're in wetlands, maybe they're in slide areas, the issues with vacation rentals. So there's lots of meat there, certainly.
Yes. Lots to do.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
It's a full-time in the city job.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a I'll drop in once a month from Mexico job.
No. I'm too old now. I passed that. I had seven cities at my peak all at once, and I have one now, and that's just perfect.
So is that just Gearhart?
Yeah.
Because I know that you were giving up Carlton. That must have been tough, right?
Well, actually, it was a pretty cute little town. We did some
Yeah.
able to do some great new things there. But yeah, I was glad to leave on my own terms.
So you only have one city, so I guess you can do it from Mexico, can't you?
Oh, somebody can say no and get rid of me. Chad's very flexible and understanding, and he's very techy, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a trial, I think. So
Are you
never-
living there now?
no, but I'm here for a while.
What does a while mean?
In April.
Okay, so do you have a place down there?
Yes.
Okay. That
Yeah.
you own or something?
Yeah. And it's really nice.
Is it?
Yes.
I never would have any desire to live there.
Oh my God. Well, we're just in a place that's kind of a small community. It's right on the Sea of Cortez. I can walk
Yeah.
to the beach. I've got a pool. The temperature is great. The people are incredibly nice, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of Americans here.
Yeah,
And it's just there's lots to do.
good.
It's outside living.
Yeah. I can walk to the beach here.
I know. Today was 78.
Oh, today was 50 maybe? Oh, my weather guy didn't inform me today. Oh,
Anyway, I'm happy where I am at the moment.
Good.
So I guess we've got 4 minutes, and have you looked at the attendance here. I see,
I see Sharon, and that's the only one that I don't know who's on the iPhone.
I don't even see Sharon.
Nancy is
Oh,
Russ.
there we go.
So I'm looking to see.
Oh, Nancy, Sharon, Mansell. Scott Cooter is the representative for the land division.
Okay.
Hi, Scott.
And Tom is always here, bless his heart.
Tom continues to be interested in us.
No. And Mansell, is that? I don't know.
Don't know. There's
Okay.
Russ.
There's Russ. iPhone. Who are you, iPhone?
I don't see the iPhone. Let's see.
I do.
Oh, there it is. Pretty good chance that's Terry.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody's a little bit almost tardy here.
Yeah, and you said that Dawn would be here. I'm sure David will be here if he got his computer fixed. And that leaves Austin. And I
What's your-
assume city
there's
admin-
Austin.
there's Austin and there's David. Okay. I assume city administration is Chad pulling his hair out.
Where is he? I don't.
It's all good, man.
Oh, there you are.
There's
Oh,
the chat.
He did pull his hair out. Look.
No, okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Is that Austin?
Okay. Yeah.
Now there was a lot of noise, but it's gone.
Okay. I like to see people when possible.
Can I go ahead and ask, is Terry Graff on?
Terry Graff is on.
There's,
Yay.
he's
Okay.
the phone,
He's the iPhone. Okay.
the
thanks,
iPhone. Chad, can you put his name there on the iPhone? On there, thank you. That's what I needed. No, there's another iPhone then. Terry, Austin. David's got a picture. David, you're actually up and alive there.
Back in the world.
Well, okay, we have Sharon and we have, so we're missing Dawn.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
actually,
looking
we're
at-
missing Russ too, but you know, we have a light bulb right now. So it's a bright idea. Oh, there's Russ.
I'm working on Don Frank. It'll take me just a moment.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll give it to you, but only today.
There's our new member, Nancy.
Yeah, I know. And Nancy is really cute.
Hey, Scott, Dave Smith, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Dave?
Hanging in there.
We're both still kicking.
Yep.
Good.
Too ordinary to go away.
That'd be nice. Where's Don Frank?
Now Chad's working on getting him on, I guess.
So is Scott going to be the presenter about the fire police station urban growth boundary?
I think he's partition.
No, that's,
He's got the partition, right?
yes, and I don't see the other Scott Freeganesi unless that's Mansell.
I-
So we'll get there, I hope, when the time comes.
Okay,
And it looks like Don is on his way.
okay.
And Scott Freakanisi is not quite here yet.
Okay,
There's RJ, Darcy, Terry Graff. Let's see here.
oh, all of a sudden we got a lot of people.
There's Mr. Frank.
There's Don. Okay, good.
Okay, there's Dawn. Okay,
I think you're ready, Ms. Chair President, if you want to start.
Okay. So it's technically 6:01. I call to order the January 13th meeting of the Gearhart Planning Commission. All Planning Commission members are present. And for staff, we have Chad Sweet and Carol Connell, who just disappeared. She's back now. Okay, so the first thing we have on our agenda tonight is election of officers. We do this every January. Right now, I serve as the president and David Smith serves as the vice president. Do I have nominations from anyone?
I nominate Jenny Didion.
For
and
what?
David is president.
Okay, Russ. So I've been nominated for president.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
Second,
Second from Terry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay. Do we have a nomination for vice president? They're the person that steps in when I can't be there. I choose not to be there.
David Smith.
Okay, I hear from Terry Graff, David Smith. Is there a second?
second.
Second from Russ. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Okay, sounds good. All right. So we will continue to serve for another year at the pleasure of the Planning Commission. First thing on our agenda is the consent agenda. Those are the minutes from December 9th, financial report from December 31st, and there is no correspondence. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So move.
Terry moves. Is there a second?
second.
A second from Russ. Terry has moved and Russ is second to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
I,
All those opposed say nay. Hearing no nays, we'll move on. Reports. First from the staff. Carol, do you have anything to present to us tonight beyond what's on the agenda?
I'd give you a quick update on the Highway 101 Improvement Plan project. It's on schedule. It's moving right along. There's a stakeholders, Citizens Advisory Committee of Highway Property Owners, and they're having their next meeting in February that will be reviewing the chosen plan. And that means, what kind of improvement are we going to see out there? That's in terms of paving, sidewalks, bike path, landscaping, and so on. And they've been doing a great job. So both consultants and the committee's been a big help. So you'll be seeing that, I don't know when, maybe in the summer.
Do you have a date for that meeting?
February the 16th. Thank you. Hey, you beat me to it.
No,
February,
I have someone else who told me.
that's right. You
Okay.
have a-
Is there anything else, Carol?
No, not for me. Chad, I'm sure
Okay.
has something.
I am sure Chad has something. Chad, there you are. What would you like to report to us tonight?
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. Just a few things here. Building officials, City of Gearhart, we've made some changes there recently, and we have a building official that's been covering us here. Excuse me, I have to admit some people in here. I'm doing double duty. So we have a new building official for the City of Gearhart temporarily. His name is Leonard Brogden. And he's working out of the City of Gearhart for 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And that's in transition from Mark Bryan, who has gone on to do other things. We also have Angelina Bryan now in full-time, as you know, and that is working out really well, although she's not here today. She and a few others have been feeling ill, so we're just kind of under COVID protocols and making sure that everybody is safe. So she's out of the office today. I'll be covering for her this evening.
Did you hear me?
But the whole grand scheme of things, though, is it seems to be a bit better with the full-time person in the office here for building type things and planning. It's been very helpful, and I think that the customer service to our builders and homeowners, property owners, is going to continue to increase. And so I'm excited about that. And it's also taking a little bit of pressure off of some of the other administrative staff here. So that's going really well. Fire station, we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight in regards to some of the planning. So if you have some questions for Mr. Scott Freakanisi, who will be in here a little bit, please feel free to ask them. The fire station, we're in the middle of the planning. We're getting a lot of the final information together. We've got some great images and some maps and some NAMI information. We've been working with Dugami and some architect engineers. So the city council, during their next city council meeting, is going to be asked to decide whether or not to file for the May election to go forward with a fire station bond. So we're getting together the cost estimates, going over those with fine tooth comb and some of the other images, and we'll present those to the city council next month. And then from there, we have a political action committee formed here locally in Gearhart, and it's formed by a lot of the volunteer firefighters and some other residents here in town. And they're going to begin working towards the fire station as well. So they'll have some events and some informational meetings here coming up very soon. So keep an eye on the blog for that as well. Other than that, things have been pretty smoothly here in town. At this point, that's all that I've got to update, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions for Chad? I didn't ask if there are any questions for Carol. Did anyone have any questions for Carol? I'm not saying it's great. For those of you that are listening in, we're getting some background noise. Anne's iPad, we're getting some background noise from you. So if you can mute yourself, I appreciate it. All right, going on. Viewers' comments not related to agenda items. Before Scott Freakanisi, is that correct? Close?
Close enough.
Okay, close enough. Would any of our visitors like to speak to an issue not on the agenda? Do you see anything, Chad?
No.
No. Okay, so Scott, this is your turn. You're going to do a presentation on the fire police station urban growth boundary.
Correct. Yeah, I won't take too much time. It's fairly brief. But first, I'd like to say to the commission that I appreciate your time and allowing me to speak with you. Chad's brought me on to help do the UGB swap. I have some experience doing UGB expansions and UGB swaps. I just recently completed a 10-acre expansion in the city of Rockaway to actually put public facilities outside of the tsunami inundation zone. Sounds a little similar, huh? They want to move their fire and police up there as well as public works. So I also have a good relationship with the LCD representation that I work with on that. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on what we're working on, kind of some of the steps we're going to jump through, and most importantly, I think, is kind of the timeline and expectations about how we'll get this done. And then open to any questions. I may have Chad follow up after me if I miss anything. So I'll try and share my screen now. Okay, course, it starts at the very end. Okay, display settings, duplicate. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that now.
Mhm.
So no surprise to you all, but the whole idea of this is to do an urban growth boundary swap for an area within the UGB that's pretty much unbuildable because it's coastal land, for an area of the same acreage for a new residential subdivision, fire station, and police station. As you know, you likely need those facilities, and having them out of the tsunami inundation zone is something that's going to be really important moving forward. You may have seen this before, but this is kind of an approximate location of the police fire station at an elevation of 65 feet, which is out of the tsunami inundation zone. So we've already started working with the DLCD regional representatives. They are going to be the ones that have to allow us to achieve the state buy-in. So essentially, we'll produce a report for them. So working closely with DLCD is going to be huge because they're the ones that will approve the swap or not. Secondly, the city is going to need to amend its comprehensive plan and zoning maps to the UGB and apply the R1 zone. So it's kind of a two-step process in terms of doing the comprehensive plan and zoning map as well, but those can be done at the same time in concurrent hearings. So that's good too. In order to take effect, the decision to swap the areas of the UGB and amend the maps must be concurrent with the city and the county. So that's really, really important. It's not just a city decision. The county has to also make changes to their mapping and go through the same steps we're going to have to do in terms of the planning commission and council. You're probably already aware of this, but in September, actually looks like August or September, the city signed a contingent land transfer agreement with the property owner. So I think that's really important. So that means we're serious about this. We've also done a preliminary geotech investigation, which is great. So that's going to be sufficient for identifying lands that are buildable or are unbuildable within that 34-acre site. I'm not sure if you all have seen this, but this is a preliminary site plan for what's being called as cottages as Gearhart. The yellow area here is where the police fire station would be. And I believe, if I remember correctly, there's 55 residential lots that are in this draft concept plan. Of course, this is all subject to change, but this is the kind of draft of the plan as we see it today. So this is a really important part about the steps we're going to have to go through, and it's OR 66024, and it's an administrative rule that will require the city to do some specific analysis to present to the state when you're proposing to do an expansion or a swap of the urban growth boundary. The good news is, because this site is less than 50 acres, the process is simplified. If it was over 50 acres, it would not be a staff level decision. So because it's under 50, the LCD can make a staff level decision to allow the swap. Another important thing, I already kind of mentioned this, but it's required that the swap have to be exactly the same size. So the area that we remove from the urban growth boundary has to be the same size as that 34-acre site. The good news is the area that we're looking at removing from the UGB is nearing 50 acres. So there's plenty of room there to do that swap. So kind of the steps in that analysis is to establish what the UGB study area, what are the areas that we're looking at expanding. We have to prioritize candidate sites for the UGB swap. So we can't just look at one location. Even though we kind of got our eye on this one, we feel like it's best, there's a lot of good reasons. We can make arguments that this 34-acre site is the one we want to do the swap for. This administrative rule requires us to take a look at least one alternative site, potentially two. So we're identifying that now through the process. And then basically we have to pick one of those preferred sites based on Goal 14 boundary location factors. So I won't get into those factors yet, but I know once we get the study and we have a draft to share with you completed, we'll go through those location factors and why we chose a preferred site and not the other site. So basically what the end product is an application for urban growth boundary swap. So that's what we're working on now. So that first step I mentioned is establishing that study area. So essentially our study area is pretty much established. It's the entire urban growth boundary from north to south. It's some of the criteria that we have to meet. It's got to be outside the M and L tsunami inundation zones. It's got to be accessible after anticipated infrastructure failures could happen due to an earthquake or tsunami. And then it has to be a sufficient parcel size for the police and fire station. And no or few development constraints. There are some, we've identified those. The geotech report was actually quite good. They've also already done a wetland delineation on the site, so we've identified where wetlands are. And then basically a central location, mostly to reduce impacts on response times because we are looking at a police fire facility.
Good idea.
Yeah, and then in terms of the critical facilities, there was a House bill. There was, for a while there, the state had a restriction on putting any new critical facilities in tsunami and inundation zones. That was removed by House Bill 3309 in 2019. But in the case of Gearhart, the city has chosen to keep stricter requirements. We have a tsunami overlay zone in place that says we will not put critical facilities in any area that's within the tsunami hazard overlay zone. And I believe that's areas under 64 feet in elevation. So that's another positive thing that I think you've done there. In terms of environmental impacts, I just think it's really important because we're going to get questions about this. And we really do need to work hard with relevant local, state, and federal agencies throughout this process to ensure that the environmental impacts are minimized and we follow all regulatory regulations. So that's kind of the last of the slides, but this is the kind of the most important one that I wanted to leave you with, and that's how long this will take, what it's going to, what the steps are. So we're here. Right now we're developing that application. We're doing that study that meets the OAR 660024. So that's what we're tasked to work with. That next step will be taking that application, so to speak, or report to DLCD to try and get their buy-in and says, yes, we think this is a good idea. We're going to allow this swap to occur. So that would be the January, February, into early March, I think. I'm planning on having DLCD start to review this next month. It just depends on what they ask for. If they want more information or more clarification, that can happen when you go back and forth with those types of report/application. So then coming into April, we'd be looking at actually doing the UGB swap, which means we'd be doing the comp plan amendments as part of that UGB swap. At the same time, we'd be having to apply that R1 zone to that 34 acres, the city's R1 zone. Right now it's county zone. So we'd have to change that zone. And then hopefully by the summer, there's an annexation into the city. So after we have the UGB swap in place, the city can then now annex that 34 acres into the city. And then we could begin the development process. So I do want to point out that these doing the UGB swap, comp plan amendments, and zoning change can happen concurrently during the hearings, but they will be completed during 2 public hearings, both at the city and county. So typically what happens is the planning commission will have 1 or 2 meetings recommending the comp plan amendments and the zoning change to the city council. Then the city council will have 1 or 2 to then adopt those comp plan amendments and zone change. And we'd like to work with the county closely to make sure that the timing lines up so we can support them too. And I typically attend both the county and the city meetings. So you'll be seeing a lot of this going through the end of the winter into the spring and getting your input and buy-in. So I think that's the end of my presentation. And I was just gonna ask Chad if I missed anything or if you wanted to add anything.
No, well, the only thing would be the tsunami overlay zone. It's more of a 50-foot restriction, 50 feet and below. We try to stay away from that. And just to give people an idea what 50 feet looks like, it would be the elevation of the park up there on Pacific Way, Leslie Miller. So that's about the elevation that is our minimum. The current place that we're looking at has an elevation of right around 68 feet, I think is where we're going to end up if we're able to construct that. Other than that, I didn't have any other questions unless anybody else did.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification. I appreciate that. And so,
Of
yeah,
course.
if there's any other questions, I'm open for that now. Hopefully I can have answers. If I don't have them tonight, I'll track them down for you.
Okay, Chad, do you see anyone with questions?
I have two.
Hey, David?
Is the geotech report approved by Clatsop County?
I don't believe it is, but what it would be is it would be an attachment to the report and application. So that geotech report would be part of the packet that both Planning Commission and Council would see as we go through this process.
And part B of that question, is the engineering firm performing that work approved by the county?
I do not know that. We will have to check that out.
I think you'd want to confirm that soon,
Definitely.
because if he's not in the approved list, that could affect your schedule. My second question is, I'm really pretty ignorant, but I don't know where the 34 acres is that we will lose in the UGB.
Let me bring up a map. I'll show you what we're looking at.
While you're doing that, Scott, if you don't mind, David, your question again was
If
about
we're
the
swapping
geotech report. The geotech report was most important for our study of the dune. It's going to be used elsewhere as well, but we wanted to make sure that that dune was as stable as possible before trying to come up with what a price of a potential foundation would be. And
I
that
understand.
geotech report gave us that information.
That is very important information to have at hand.
Yeah.
So if you take a look at this map here, the yellow line is your current city limit. This kind of peachish pink color is your urban growth boundary. So there's really only two areas that you would have areas for expansion currently. This little pocket here, and then this area here, which is actually mostly developed anyway. So there's about 50 acres of oceanfront land where you have setback rules where you can't develop. You can frankly see right where it is right through here. And so this is about 50 acres of land. So the idea would be to carve off a 34-acre piece right in this location here that would then make up this 34 acres up here to the north.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
So Scott, I had a question. I thought originally we were looking at the area in the Palisades. Has that gone and now you're looking at this area basically west of Highlands?
No, it's the same area. I might have just did my mouse a little off.
Oh, okay, your mouse was a little off.
So I have a question.
Okay, Ann, and can you give us your last name, Ann?
Yes, I'm Ann Taylor.
Okay, and do we need any other information, Carol or Chad?
Generally, address is helpful,
Address.
yes.
Address,
Okay.
please.
Excuse me, 124 3rd Street in Gearhart.
Okay,
So my question is, given the short timeline that we're talking about for the land swap, I'm wondering why there hasn't been more information forthcoming about a potential land swap, and I was just made aware of that. And secondly, if you do have two parcels, why was it so hard for me to get information about what parcels you were looking at for a land swap?
Well, I'm not sure I have a clear answer to that question. There is, there will be public noticing done for the public hearings that occur. And obviously the report that's going to be done will be in the public domain. I think it'd be, smart to have that available for any citizens that want to look at it. And the timeline's actually is not that short. I mean, we're looking at, this won't be done for 4 or 5 months. So, yeah.
And so the land swap is Gearhart for Gearhart, essentially. Is that correct?
It's Gearhart's UGB,
Right.
and then moving a piece of your UGB to another area that's actually currently county land.
Well, that was my question. So-
I'm going to interrupt you, Ann. Chad, do you want to let Ann know where she can find this information, where it's easily accessible? Unmute yourself.
Thank you. There's a lot of information on the website at cityofgearhart.com under fire station, but the land swap is coming together in regards to what we're working with Scott. And there's going to be quite a bit of public opportunity to participate in this. I can think of at least 3 public meetings that will happen in regards to this situation. So we're formulating the process. Pretty well got through that. Now we're working on getting some data and statistics, and then we will start making some presentations to the public. With that, the blog is the best way at the City of Gearhart WordPress blog. You'll get notifications of all of these meetings that come up as we have to notify them legally. But so it's still a process, and it's a work in public or a work in process. The swap itself is again swapping for unbuildable land, things that you can't do anything with at the moment, and you won't be able to do anything with, and taking that area and putting it onto an area that hopefully we can look at some growth in order to do some things for the city fire department. So more to come.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Any other questions from the commissioners for Scott?
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Don.
The bond measure is in May, or slated to be on the ballot in May. I'm wondering how that affects the schedule that Scott just laid out, whether it passes or does not pass. What impact does that have?
I'll jump in and Chad, you might want to help me with this afterwards, but I think that we will know before that whether the state is going to give us the yay or the nay on the swap. So even if we're in the process of doing the comp plan amendments and the zone change, we will still know that we're allowed to do the swap. Does that make that? So I hope that helps. So the key that we need to know is we need to make sure that the state's going to allow us to do the swap before, and then that's the first step we have before we get into the public hearings doing the amendments to the map.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, to keep things moving forward, we're gonna look at the vote itself is in May. And if that is the case, then it's going to be almost another until the next spring, until we start construction on something like that. There's a lot of time in between. But I think that the timing as well is we don't know where we're going to stop with this. Let's say that the bond does not pass, yet we're still within this process of looking at this other piece of land. The city may consider, the city being all of us here, may consider continuing on with this land swap process, even if the bond does fail at this moment. There is an opportunity for this city to acquire some land through the swap and some high land that we can sit on until there's some other ideas, or the city does decide to maybe expand out that area with a fire station in the future. So some of this can continue on if the city so chooses to do as well, regardless of how the vote pans out. So that's another option.
Thank you.
Okay, Don?
Very good. Thank you.
All right. All right. Do you see any other questions or anything else out there, Chad?
No, I don't. People who are on the phone aren't able to raise their hand.
Okay.
At all, and I
But
see a few of those, but
I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, I appreciate your presentation, Scott. I hope it helped. Those of us who could see your slide presentation. Chad, is it possible to get his slide presentation on the blog or on something there at the city? So, or would that be reasonable?
yeah, no, that's absolutely possible. I'll work with Miss Angelina on that when she returns.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful because I know for me, I would like to look back through those again and just so I can understand better what's going on. Okay,
Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to working with you all.
thank you. So you're
Thank you, Scott.
excused if you want to leave. All right, now we're moving on to the most exciting part of the meeting, the public hearings. As you all know, that before we have public hearings and all that, I have to read a statement. We have two public hearings tonight. We have 2106P, the Pfeiffer Road land partition by Heritage Homes, and the continued discussion of the draft Gearhart Parks Master Plan 21-04 CP.CTA. So I will open the hearings. I will read the public, the disclosure statement and move ahead from there. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the application and must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision, continuance, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code. The city's zoning code specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are the city staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes apply to the proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the city council or land use board of appeals or to seek damages in circuit court due to a condition of approval. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the Planning Commission for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence, arguments, or testimony that is within the scope of the hearing. The hearings body shall grant the request by scheduling a date to finish the hearing to a time and date certain, or by leaving the record open for additional evidence, argument, or testimony pursuant to ORS 197.763 6A through E. And now I have to ask the commissioners, to declare a conflict of interest and ex parte contact or personal bias. Is there any? Yes, Carol. Unmute yourself.
I want to make sure that your first hearing is clear, that it's on the Pfeiffer Land Division.
Yes.
And that's what you're asking the commission
Yes.
to declare any conflicts, ex parte contact, or bias.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry if I did not make that clear. Yes. So are you seeing anything, Chad? I'm not seeing anything.
If if you don't mind me butting in, there was some couple questions about seeing the site, and there was some communication back and forth by email with the staff and the planning commissioners. And if anybody did visit the site, that would be a time to declare you had an ex parte contact. In fact, in other words, you were there, but the rest of the commission wasn't there. And then you could explain what it is you might have learned that you haven't seen in the staff report or in the application.
Okay,
Just want to make sure, since we have a few new commissioners, that was clear.
okay. I visited this site today and determined that it was raining. And that, you know, the ground is dug up already and they're building this other house, but that's all. Did anyone else visit the site? Don, Russ, Dave?
I did walk by the side. I didn't enter the property. I just looked at it from the street.
Yeah. Anyone else? Sharon?
Yes, I visited the site today also. And I just had a couple questions that I was gonna ask Mr. Johnson.
Okay, so when we get, okay, when we get to the presentation, that would be excellent time to ask those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but you went to the site today. Okay, awesome. Austin or Terry, have you visited the site?
I haven't. Terry hasn't.
Austin has it.
Austin has it. Okay. All right, is that what you wanted, Carol?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. To the audience, all those people listening, are there any challenges to the commission's ability to make an impartial decision? Hearing none, I'll move on. So this is the public hearing again on 21-06P Pfeiffer Road land partition by Heritage Homes. Carol will give the staff report.
Thank you, Madam President. The staff report has been available for a week. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. If you have any questions, we can talk about those after I do a very short summary. And if I can ask the city administrator to put the drawing up while I'm talking, I think it might help. Put the drawing, share the drawing on the screen so that it's a very good detailed sketch that we don't always have the privilege of getting. So anyway, it's a 2-lot land division and it's by Heritage Home Builders. You see parcel 1 is the very similar to the parcel to the north, but parcel 1 is right there and parcel 2 is to the south, and it's a much bigger lot and it has an existing home on it. So the land division is cutting parcel 1 off of the parent parcel. Regarding agency comments, all the city agencies were notified and there were no concerns raised. There's currently an existing single-family house on the property. The west boundary of the parcel is adjoined by a wetland designation that's associated with the adjoining Neocoxie Creek. There's dense trees and shrubbery that extend from the edge of the creek about 115 feet east into the lot. The applicant states that no trees will be removed for a future dwelling, which obviously the future dwelling is going on parcel 1. This parcel is of course within the medium tsunami scenario zone, but the density is not enough to kick in any tsunami provisions. So this zone doesn't apply. Surrounding land and uses to the north include a dwelling to the north, Pfeiffer Road to the east, dwelling to the south, and the creek to the west. There's already water service to the parcel number 2, and new septic system and water extension would have to be built, extended to parcel 1 if the land division is approved and a building permit is approved. The zone of the property is medium density residential R2. The minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet. These are large parcels, even after a division that far exceed the 7,500 feet. The setbacks are 15 feet from the front and the rear and 5 feet plus 9 feet on the 2 sides. The 9-foot side is in this case on the south side of parcel 1. And what you see, I'm not sure what all that noise is, but it comes and goes. anyway, there's a dashed line on parcel 1 that shows you the building envelope. In other words, taking those setbacks into account, you see the dashed line factors in a 5-foot setback on the north side, a 9-foot setback on the south side, and the 15 on the street, and then much more on the west side because of the creek. So it meets all the zoning requirements. The wetland, our local inventory is a 2011 designation, and this illustration is pretty accurate as to, you can see the wetland line on the north piece, on the north end of this piece of paper, pointing at the creek. And then you see the slope, which goes up quite a bit from 9.2 feet at the creek to 29 feet at the dwelling site. So it drops off quite a bit with a big 50-foot setback to the future building envelope on parcel 1. The let's see, what else did I have to say? Yeah, there's 25-foot setback from a delineated net wetland. And this setback is shown on the building envelope is 50 feet. Okay, moving over to the other side of the property on Pfeiffer Road, the transportation improvements and access requirements section of the zoning code kick in, as does the transportation system plan and the subdivisions requirements for what to be done with a road when you're creating a new lot and a new dwelling. So the codes require that partitions are required to construct improvements to any street in accordance with both the zoning ordinance and the transportation system plan. No building permit can be issued until those street improvements are in place, and or otherwise, unless the city manager, and I think in this case, the planning commission is the decider, in those improvements are bonded or provided a fee in lieu of, or waived to be done at a future time when the local improvement district would be set up to make those improvements all at once. And so we find that Pfeiffer Road is, of course, the east boundary is the existing street, and it's considered substandard in terms of the transportation system plan and a long range street planning for the city. Right now, the right of way is 40 feet. And in accordance with the TSP, it's not a big substandard situation. The right of way is planned to be 45 feet. It's still a narrow-ish street, and it shouldn't ever be anything very much wider. But the transportation system plan gives it a little extra room so that a shared bike ped path can be put in that street in the future. And conveniently it connects to Summit to the south, so it becomes a direct access to Pacific Way eventually in the long range planning. And so in order to get that 45 feet, the typical way to do that in the case of a land division is to get half of it on one side and half on the other. And so that would require in this land division a 2.5 foot strip of land on the east property line to be dedicated to the city and included in the final plat. So that's the appropriate time to do it. And so we recommend that be done for this future TSP north-south pedestrian bicycle and evacuation path. So moving on, the widening, never mind, it's just repeating it. There's a lot of redundancy in our codes, and I'll just keep going. Both the subdivision ordinance and the transportation plan offer the city the ability to require that improvement to go in now as part of a building permit. But in many cases, it doesn't make sense logistically, practically on the ground, or because there's no plan for any kind of a street improvement, and what would the specification be? So even though you could require it, and I will say we talked about this with the Banta Land Division on McCormick Gardens Road, and you had this very same issue. If you don't, at least it should be waived and deferred and required at a later time through a waiver of remonstrance. That would be for the improvement. The dedication should be done now, because there's no better time than a land division when you're creating a new lot to actually have the dedication included in that legal recording process. But is there a proportionality between this one house and requiring to put a bit of a street improvement in? Probably not legally. Something that you could or should require, because we don't know what the plan is exactly. We don't know how much it costs. We don't know what the fee in lieu of would be. There is no capital improvement plan for Pfeiffer at this time. So then staff recommends you go with the dedication and then the waiver of remonstrance for a future improvement. Back to the creek, because it's a different section of the code. It just pops out. Neocoxy Creek riparian setback, page 6 on the staff report, is required. So first of all, the wetland is a 25-foot setback, and then the Neocoxy Creek requirement in section 6.070, the zoning code, is a 50-foot setback. And as I mentioned earlier, this setback has been established. You can see the 50-foot arrow measurement on the lower part of parcel 2 that shows 50 feet to that building envelope on parcel 2, which is already built on, but it closely coincides with the new parcel to be a comparable amount of setback, not to necessarily a house, which I think is going to be even further back, but just to this future building envelope. I think I'll stop there. Everything else is in writing in terms of the criteria. Oh, the one thing, back to another section in the, we got the street planning is in the zoning code, and there's the subdivision ordinance has these other provisions. Page 9 on wetlands is a repeat about the 25-foot setback, but I recommend that the city include in this decision, if it's approved, that pesticides, herbicides, and other chemicals, as well as debris dumping or significant native vegetation removal in the wetland, be prohibited as a restriction on the building permit in order to protect the quality of Neocoxy Creek. So in conclusion, this is a simple 2-lot land division. It's only creating one new dwelling. Staff recommends this be approved, subject to the conditions on page 11 and 12. And I think you have those in front of you, so maybe in the discussion, if you want to talk about some of the specific conditions that are there, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Carol, your comment about pesticides and that you just made, is that in the conclusion?
It's in the condition number 6.
Ah, found it. Okay.
Now, I don't know, the city administrator may want to weigh in on this. I don't think we've put this on a building permit before. Maybe we have. But, and I'm not, 100% confident on how over time it gets enforced, but I think it needs to be considered and in writing.
Okay. I can't see by my screen because the map is up there. If any of the commissioners have questions for
Oh.
Carol.
You can take it away if you want.
I can't take it away. You can take it away, or Chad can take. Do any of the commissioners have questions for Carol at this point before we hear from the applicant? Not hearing any, then this is the time for the applicant to make their report. So Scott Cooter, are you going to be the speaker?
Sure.
Okay, would you please state your name for the record and your address, please?
Can everybody hear me? I'm Scott Cooter. I'm a professional land surveyor. I work for CKI Land Surveying. That's my map that you were just looking at. And
And can
I
we have your
represent-
address, please?
PO Box 2699, Gearhart, Oregon,
Thank you.
7138. Yeah, I represent Heritage Homes, and I think Nate Johnson is here also. Yeah, it's a fairly simple partition, taking an existing larger lot and dividing it into two. The new parcel that we're going to be creating will have a new house constructed on it. And then we're in the process of fixing up the old house and getting that ready to go. I think it's a fairly simple partition. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you folks might have.
Okay,
Carol pretty much covered it all.
all right, thank you. Did Nate Johnson want to say anything?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I'm Nathan, and
Would you please state your full name and your address, please, for the record?
my name is Nathan Johnson, and my address is 90856 Fort Clatsop Road, Astoria, Oregon.
Thank you.
I listened to Scott, and he gave a pretty good, accurate description of what the plan is there. I don't really have anything to add to it. Here, if anybody has any questions,
Okay.
happy to answer.
I know, Sharon, you said you had a question.
I have actually two questions.
Yes, go ahead.
For Scott and Nathan. And oh, by the way, I did speak briefly with Nathan today. I asked him a question. I forgot to say that. Sorry. So my first question is under the background. It says that applicant states no trees will be removed for future dwelling. And my question is, I just wondered how many trees have already been removed.
There has been trees removed, but I can't give you a number on that. Not that many, to my recollection. There was a demolition of a shop and some scrubbing and some tree removal, but I don't know. Maybe Scott can speak to that.
All I can mention is that, there were some really small trees on the site that I believe were removed along with the demolition of the existing house, but the larger spruce trees that kind of secure the bank there down towards Neocoxie Creek are still in place.
Okay, Sharon, did you have a second question?
Well, just to follow up with what they just said about the tree removals, I walk by that lot probably 2 times a week, if not more. And in September, multiple trees were removed, including a huge, probably, I don't know, 5 foot in diameter at the base, old growth spruce. So I was just surprised, I guess, to see that sentence that states that no trees will be removed, because a lot of trees have already been removed from that lot. That was done in September. So my next question is, and this is just a question born out of my experience, and I apologize for that. on the map, under utility and street notes in the bottom left-hand corner, number 4 says no significant lot grading is proposed. And I guess I don't know what grading is. There's been a lot of earth moved around on that lot. There's piles of earth. I know that where all the vegetation was removed, in front of where the piles are, there was a lot of dirt graded. I mean, I don't know what you call it. So I guess I'd like their input on that. And I'm sorry that I'm so ignorant about this, but I know a lot of earth has been moved around.
Scott, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I would say that there has been some grading done associated with the removal of the existing structure. It looks a lot worse than it actually is. You know, it looks like there's, you know, bare sand and a lot of things being moved around, but really it's just that existing house and structure barn got removed, or so there's not a lot going on down there.
Okay, thank you. Carol, you raised your hand, and then did you want to say something?
Well, I
Sure.
think my question is about the trees and the grading is, was there anything done in that 50-foot setback area that's associated with the wetland and the creek and the slope? And then was there more than 50 cubic yards of dirt moved?
I can't
Is that-
speak to the amount of yards that got moved, but I can tell you that we did stake out the 50-foot riparian setback line for Nate and his dad, Ben. They asked me to locate that so they could get somebody out there to look at the septic. And of course, that has to meet that 50-foot setback line. And it ended up being fairly close to the top of the bank. So I would definitely say that there's not been anything major done within that 50-foot riparian setback line, which is mostly the bank and that slope that you see on the map with the steep contours.
Yeah, the word major is a little troubling because I don't know what that means. Normally anywhere in the state, if you move more than 50 cubic yards, you have to have a permit, but grading permit.
I would say that also it's a little bit misleading because there are actually 2 lots in there. So there is a lot, if you walk by that site, there's a lot on the right-hand side. And then there's the other lot that contains the house. So you look at that site and you think that there's been a lot done on the far right-hand side, but that's actually the lot that we're not developing as far as this partition goes.
Scott, Nathan here. I don't believe there has been over 50 cubic yards moved there. With the demolition of the shop and the removal of the concrete and then replacing and smoothing the grade out after the demolition of the shop, I just don't see it. I don't think that happened.
Right. I mean, you're talking about a dump truck carries 10 yards at the most. So, you know, if you're talking 50 cubic yards, that would be 5 dump truck loads coming out of there or moved on site. And I'm sure that did not happen.
Thank you.
Okay, Carol. David, you had your hand up.
Well, Scott answered the issue that it's easy to visualize 5 dump truck loads of sand or soil as
Right.
comprising 50 cubic yards.
Mhm.
That's a lot of material.
Okay, all right, great. Do any of the other commissioners have questions for Nate and Scott? Clarification?
One more from me, Ginny.
Yes.
David, as part of the demolition on that portion of the property, Was there a silt fence installed or required at all?
Mr. Smith, I don't believe that there was a silt fence installed, but I think efforts were made to maintain some existing vegetation on the west side of the construction or demolition.
Okay.
Okay, all right. There are no more questions from the commissioners. Then this is a time for, I have to go to my script, a time for, was that someone?
No.
No, okay. Now time to hear from public comment. We'll first hear from anyone that's a proponent of this partition. Please keep your comments to the subject and limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, please. Are there anyone that would like to speak as a proponent of this partition? Do you see anything, Chad? I don't hear anything, okay? Are there any opponents to this partition that would like to speak? Hearing none. Any neutral comments? No, okay. Well, the applicant really doesn't have to rebuttal anything unless they wanted to say anything at this point. No?
No.
No silence? Okay. Then I'm going to close the public hearing on this partition, and it is now time for the commission to discuss it. I'll just start on my screen. Russ, do you have anything you would like to say?
No, I think it's a pretty straightforward proposal, and I think I'm in favor.
Okay, and David, do you have anything to say?
I have no comments.
Okay, and down to Dawn, do you have anything?
I agree with what Russ said. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, and down to Sharon?
No, nothing more.
Okay, and Austin?
Nothing more from me.
Okay, and Terry?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, and I really don't have anything to say either. So we have a suggestion from on the staff report. We can
Mr.
either.
President,
Yes, ma'am. Did I miss something?
I did have an idea.
Ooh, okay.
If the applicant would be willing to mitigate any tree removal by planting a few spruce trees or other native vegetation near the Neocoxie Creek or in the setback area as a suggestion.
Not as a
Other than-
condition, as a suggestion.
Well, it could be a condition or in the form of a suggestion.
Okay.
Carol, why are you at that? Carrie, it wasn't your original conditions.
No, it wasn't, because I did not have all the information about what was actually removed over time. I was going by the report, which said there would be no tree removal, and it turns out there was some tree removal. And I just think it's a good faith effort to replace those trees. That's maybe my biased opinion, but it wouldn't hurt anything.
So what would the language be for that condition that we would be voting on?
We could say, condition number 10, that the planning commission recommends or requires that the applicant plant, he took out a big spruce, a Sitka spruce, and any other native vegetation associated with the Neocoxy riparian area. Something
Are
like
you
that.
talking about what's already been removed or what might be removed?
Well,
Something
I'm
else.
under the impression that no more is being removed, but it's associated with that was removed.
But they don't
Can I-
know, can they identify what's been removed so we know what has to be replaced?
I have pictures of what was removed. I took pictures at the time in September. And there's actually one tree, spruce, left at the Pfeiffer end of the property. That's all that was left of all the vegetation that was there. The rest of it has been completely removed except for in the 50-foot riparian zone.
Well, let me speak to it as a builder. You know, when you are, you have to take trees out if they're in the footprint of the house. That is just part of the process to get something done. But I'm not against, I guess my only concern about putting a condition rather than a suggestion is that I have not seen the site. I don't know what's on the bank of the Neocoxy, but if we say you must put something on the bank of the Neocoxy, maybe there's already enough stuff there. I mean, to me, we're making a condition that might not be the very best suggestion for the property. Just
Well,
putting
I
a
agree.
tree back because one went away is, I don't know if that's necessarily a valid concern.
Well, it
Yeah, I
sounds like too that no trees were removed outside the riparian area, so that doesn't really have any conditions that we have on our regulations.
Yeah, I have to agree that in removing the other building that was there in the concrete, and having, and it appears that they've made kind of a half circular driveway, or that's the intention with it going into lot 1 and coming back at lot 2. Is that correct, Nathan?
That circular driveway that you see on the north side is just an existing driveway that was there that serviced that existing shop. So
Oh, okay.
that's something that won't be used.
Oh, okay, that was something I didn't know. It was sitting there. I thought, oh, how clever. See, it's no longer clever. But yeah, Carol, the vegetation on the bank is still there.
Yeah, I was just tossing out kind of a idea that might be amenable, and if nobody likes it, then forget it.
Okay.
Okay, this is Terry. I move
Yes.
that we accept the recommendations, including the conditions as written by Carol.
Okay, so Terry has moved to, excuse me, to approve, basically approve the proposed tentative partition plat as presented with the conditions.
Yes,
That's-
that's my,
All right, Terry's moved
So-
that. Do I have a second?
So second.
That is Austin. Austin is second. So Terry's moved and Austin is second to approve this partition as presented with the conditions. Is there any further discussion? David, you have your hand up.
Let's see, that would be essentially condition number 1 on page 13.
Correct.
Would be one. No, that is the motion on page 1. The conditions are 1 through 9 on pages 11 through 12.
yes.
Okay, as presented and or modified by the planning commission.
Right, and we did not modify anything.
Correct. Okay,
Okay.
I have no other comment or concern.
Okay, just clarification point. Excellent. Any other comments? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. No nays, it is passed. Congratulations, gentlemen. You have your partition. Yes, please, the conditions, we'll still expect you to meet those. And if you want to leave now, you can leave because you don't need to stick around for the rest of it. Okay,
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
good night.
We will miss you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the second agenda item, the continuation of the public hearing of the draft Gearhart Parks Master Plan 21-04 CP point ZTA. As our minutes indicate, we closed public comment on the at the last meeting. We gave Carol some suggestions and criteria that we were concerned about. Some spellings, I believe Skylar Archibald would still like his name spelled correct. It's spelled correct one place and misspelled in the sentence right, the words right before it. So if we can, so what we need to do, commissioners, is we need to continue our discussion. If there's things that we still need to change or drop out, we really need to move this along, right, Carol? Am I right in that?
That's your prerogative, but if you're ready to ship this up to the city council, we will be staying on a pretty good schedule for the due date of April.
Okay.
They'll probably have 1 or 2 hearings on what you send forward.
Okay.
Probably 2.
All right. As you notice, changes made. There's a lot of this materials moved back to the appendices. So that's really for background information for anyone looking at this. Carol added in red changes. So they're easy to spot. Carol, on 3.6 on page 13, it says tennis, pickleball, and basketball courts to be maintained as. Is the as supposed to be crossed off too?
Oh dear. Well, I don't know if I have the same version, but mine says as currently arranged, and then in red, when this plan was adopted.
No, it doesn't say that at all. Mine says tennis, pickleball, and basketball courts to be maintained as, then in red, crossed off, says presently operated. And that's all it says.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about the title. I was looking at the text.
No, I was just.
The title.
Yes, the title. Is as supposed to be crossed off?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I was looking at the text, which almost repeats the same thing.
All right, it just threw me.
Got it.
Okay, so commissioners, it's time.
Well, and I'm not here to
Okay,
throw
this is
this is
Carrie speaking.
Yeah, cold water on anything, but I'm not going to be able to support this as written if it contains policy number 19. In my opinion, the issues addressed in policy 19 are already addressed in the existing tree and vegetation standards located in zoning code 6.070. And the new language in 19 appears to me to be in direct contact with that existing language. And in that case, in Carol's notes, she said that policy 19 may need to be incorporated into the park and open zone space zone. And if that's the case, then I suggest that policy 19 be separated from the parks plan And if somebody wants to bring it up at a later date, they certainly can do that. At that time, the planning commission consider the issue, have a public hearing, and decide if changes need to be made. And I also think the new language is written in policy 19 is in direct conflict with policy number 4. And I'm not sure all the restrictions are necessary to protect the parks and dunes. And until I hear some professional that tells me that that's necessary, I'm not willing to support it. And further, this didn't come from a committee that spent years doing this. There were a lot of people on the committee, and I'm not sure where this came from. It just kind of popped up at the very end. It wasn't in the original draft, and I'm not sure where it came from, and it's not the way we've done things. And so, Carol, my question to you is, where did this language come from? And it just kind of came out of nowhere at the last meeting or two.
Okay, well, you remember we had the work session with the council, and there were a lot of ideas thrown out then, and this was one of them, to add what was called an environmental integrity, kind of an overall arching environmental policy to the policies that were presented by the advisory committee.
But I
And-
mean, we already have something existing, some language that this would be in conflict with. Wouldn't the proper way to do it is to amend the existing language, separate this out and amend if that's where we want to put it? I mean, why are we approving something that's in direct conflict with something that's already there?
I guess, I would say, and I'm going to ask Sharon to reinforce anything I say or add to or clarify, because Sharon wrote the majority of this and I assisted her. Yeah, is that it's a little more explicit than what's in place. The one thing that is missing in the current park zone, I mean, that's the best way to describe where it needs to be, is that the riparian setback of 50 feet that you see in other parts of the current zone and in the Little Beach area and for Neocoxie Creek and Mill Creek is also meant to be applied to the estuary. But it wouldn't be the whole estuary, it would be just the land in the estuary that is zoned for city parks. And,
Well, then the proper
we do
way
need to do that.
Seems to me would be to propose an amendment to the existing language and then have it come before the planning commission, have a public hearing and decide what to do with it. Instead, and I always thought you're the one who was writing this language.
No.
I'm trying to put you on the spot, but I guess it just doesn't seem like the way we've done it in the past.
No, this was as a result of the work session that you had, and it was, Sharon, you correct me if I'm wrong, she recommended an environmental integrity policy, and nobody objected, I'm sure. And so she presented it, and it was then out of the committee's hands. The committee was done with it, and it was on its next phase of review, this document, in which 19 was a new addition to what the committee did.
Well, there were a lot of ideas thrown around that night. Well, anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. And I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the plan as amended, excluding policy 19. But I want to hear what other people think about this. I'm only one vote.
Okay, Carrie, thank you for your input. Other commissioners, raise your hand or let me know you want to talk.
Just to go off
Austin.
of,
Okay,
yeah, this is Austin. I made some corrections to policy number 19 as we have written in front of us, and I don't know if this will relieve Terry of any of his concerns, but There is in policy number 19A, we have what has been changed, which I appreciate Carol doing based on my previous comments in the last meeting about the herbicide and the use for noxious weeds. I think that the 20 to 30% agricultural grade vinegar, maybe spot applied, should be removed because it's just kind of sitting there out there. I mean, it's if the Public Works Department decides to use that or any other non-labeled herbicide, then they can choose to do so. I don't think it has to be so specific to something like that. And then the last sentence, any area treated as such will be flagged. I would also add flag posted with signage on site, and then also along with any city notification process through to the website or blog. I think that would be sufficient to alleviate anybody's concern about use of herbicide in areas where public use is going on.
Hey, Austin, can you say that one more time, Austin? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch your wording. Any area treated as such will be flagged
and posted on site, so our signage on site, and through the city's public notification process through online or website.
Thank you.
Austin, this is, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since you were speaking, in the new language, it said the city will not allow any top-down cutting.
Right.
How does that coincide with policy number 4C, preservation of scenic views from within the dunes and from neighbors?
Right. I'll get to that, Terry. That's my next comments on policy number 19, subsection B. I think the first sentence, trees will be maintained as wherever possible, is a good sentence. I think the next sentence should be removed. No trees over 6 inches in diameter measure the base will be removed unless posing an imminent threat. I think we should remove that. And just bear with me here. Decisions regarding administrator or designee, preferably as advised by an arborist. I don't know where the sentence or the rest of the sentence kind of comes into play. Who has no financial gain in the matter? If an arborist has they are legally bound to notify individuals or in this case the city of any endangered trees, and so it wouldn't be of any financial gain to them unless they had a specific reason for it. It kind of just seems like arborists are always out to cut trees down. I don't really see that as a case. So that would end it. Preferably advised by an arborist, period.
Got it. Thank you.
The next sentence would be trimming, pruning, and removal will be limited to a hazardous or obstructive tree or limb, period. I don't see any necessary language for the next part of it. Would be window painting. It's just too specific to the tree itself, and the ability to actually regulate that would be impossible. The next sentence, the city will not allow any top-down tree cutting. I would remove because in this case, there might be something in the line of some type of utility line, or if we're trying to accomplish some type of preservation of a view along, especially on Leslie Miller Park, which has been designated as a ocean view park, we might need to do that. The next sentence, I would just add that the first word would be native bushes and thickets.
Mm-hmm.
Will remain and only be trimmed back to allow pass and emergency access to remain passable. Because if you might have a laurel or something like that, that could probably be taken out because they're not a native species. Um,
Scotch,
what's that, Terry?
what about Scotch broom?
And Scotch broom, obviously, yeah, that's not a native. The mowings, the next sentence, the mowing of dunes and areas, I think should be a separate line item. It has nothing to do with the trees, the tree discussion in basically subsection B of policy 19. So it could either be the next C, or it could be added to the policy number 4 as far as the dune management.
Or it could be numbered E.
Or E at the end, yeah. And that's actually all I had. The riparian zone, I know Terry's concerned about that. And I think that in this case, we're trying to designate it as an illicit item in the park zone, specifically along the Mechanicum. And so I would love to see no riparian setback for that. But if it needs to be moved to a specific provision in the park zone itself, I'm willing to have that be brought back to the commission for reevaluation as that provision needs to be, if that's the case. But I'm not. I'm either for it, or I'm not really either for it or against it being in this language. I think it should be clear whether or not it should be for everybody to kind of take a look as far as the zoning standards, or if it's in this plan itself. So,
Hey,
Austin, clarification. So
Yeah.
are you saying the current C about the riparian zone should be left in, or it should be put someplace else?
I'm either for it. I just want to make sure that it's clear in our comprehensive plan and in the zoning policy. So if it contradicts anything in the zoning policy, or if it needs to be put in there specifically instead of in this plan, then I'm willing to move that to the zoning standard, or keep it in here. I just want to make sure it's all clear, as Terry does too, I'm sure.
And
Well, I mean,
Yes,
does this really
Terry.
go a parks plan as opposed to amending the existing language?
Right.
It seems to me like that's the normal way to do it.
Well, that would have the right effect because this plan is just for parks. And I think it would be actually better, more easily implemented if it's in the park zone.
Then
It might
that
get-
sounds like a good plan.
Get lost here in the back of a parks master plan when it really should be in the zone.
okay, so that would be remove that. Is that correct?
And I keep coming back to your sentence, the provisions are more restrictive than the existing tree and vegetation standards located in the zone so-and-so, currently applicable to all public and private properties. Now, how will this affect private property?
This policy 19, as it states in the title, is for only in city-owned public parks.
Okay.
Everything about it is only affecting city-owned public parks.
Okay, I guess I want to hear from others on this also.
David has a comment or two.
Okay, David, your hand is up. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I have some general concerns about enforcement and cost issues. Who's going to be paying the arborist?
Okay, so this is just a general comment. There's nothing
general.
specific in the plan. Okay.
Who will be paying the arborist, and will the arborist be measuring dozens of trees that are existing there that are volunteer style plants? Number two, I think that the paragraph C is kind of like an editorial comment rather than a zoning oriented comment. And again,
David, for clarification, you're talking about C under 3.19, correct?
3.19 paragraph C,
Okay,
as in clown.
right. I just want to make sure that you referred to the policy, so we knew where you were at.
Yes, and 3.19 paragraph D, as in dog. Again, I like the idea of native plants, and trees will be added wherever possible or appropriate. Again, I have a question about appropriateness of enforcement and cost of that line of that fiat.
Now, may I try and answer? Keep in mind that the parks plan is establishing a parks, well, as it is written, depending on the council, Citizens Advisory Committee. And so they're going to be the stewards of this plan, just like the Planning Commission is of the comprehensive plan. And so, you know, this will be their baby to implement. And sometimes it'll maybe come before the Planning Commission and City Council what they do, but it's going to be their responsibility.
I understand, Carol, that's very true. However, I think the 5 counselors may raise similar concerns with our forwarding things that may challenge their ability to enforce or afford.
I don't disagree with that. And the costs would be associated with the city budget. So that's how that would all be handled.
And if they had objections to anything that I may have brought up, that could lead to this thing being tossed out and being asked to be redone.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just want to make sure everybody remembered that.
The cleaner and the more straightforward we can send ahead, the better chance of things not necessarily coming back. My last comment on paragraph 319, again, is paragraph C, as in corner. At the very end of the paragraph, there is a lone closed parentheses that doesn't seem to mean anything. And I'm wondering, is that just a typo?
Are you talking about C of policy 19?
Yes. At the very end is a closed parentheses all by itself.
It's a typo.
Oh, that's a typo. I see. That should have been a period, or it could have been I forgot the other part of the parentheses at the beginning.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm just concerned about a $1,000 an hour attorney coming and talking to us about this 3 years from now.
Yeah, and that sentence would come out of the master plan. It would, it just needs to be, it was just trying to make clear that still should be done. As Terry said.
Otherwise, that's all of my my comments, and I would be supportive of Terry's mentioning of a motion.
Okay, let's make sure we hear from everyone else.
Well, I've got some things to say.
Well,
This is
thank you.
Russ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Russ.
Starting with policy 6.
6.
I say it's.
Hold on. I gotta get with you because you talk fast and.
I want to get rid of a bunch of words, Carol.
Okay. Fire away.
The heading should say tennis, pickleball, and basketball courts.
Yeah, got it.
Then in the first sentence, it says they will be continue and maintained for use as currently arranged when the plan is adopted. And so that is enough. We don't need beyond the red part where it says when this plan is adopted, I say we get rid of all that.
I don't disagree. I already took out a bunch, but yeah, before you leave that sentence, I in red, when it says when this plan was adopted, you know, I want to make sure everybody agrees that they don't want the courts to change anymore. Because I don't know if is how you actually feel or if that's appropriate. Maybe there will be some more pickleball added to those courts. But the way it's written, they shall remain the way they are right now. That was from the committee. The Parks Committee.
So I think it should remain the way it is right now. And if it wants to be changed, they can come back and change it. Because I think pickleball is here to stay and it's going to expand. And I've heard they want to have tournaments and add courts and all that. And I think we should draw the line right now and say this is where it is.
Okay, that's the way the group feels. I just want to make sure, because that's a pretty hard line. I mean,
Okay, then,
So is short rentals.
then to number 7, we go to the bottom of that paragraph on policy number 7, where it says playground equipment designed, constructed to blend in with the rustic and historical character of the community, period. I
wait,
just,
what sentence? I got number 7.
the bottom of there's the long paragraph.
Yeah,
At the end of the paragraph where it says with unpainted cedar being the preferred finished material.
gotcha.
and
Thank
minimal,
you.
I say get rid of that. If we say it's blended with the rustic and historical character of the community, that to me covers it. And then the next page, I guess it's the continuation of that. Yeah, Trails End is there's a lot of stuff. I say, oh, the city will avoid.
Wait, where are you?
Page 14, top of page 14. Says the city will avoid converting any portion of this property to use for parking of vehicles. And then we jump down, I say we get rid of the next 2 or 3 lines and say, go down to accepting in the event that future development of the facilities on this property require provisions of additional parking to comply with zoning, building, ADA, yakety yak. So I'm just trying to condense that long paragraph.
I know, and some of these notes and statements, you know, Chad and I talked, some of them will help in the future, kind of clarify what was meant. And so I did a little bit of leaving some and taking out others, but there still probably is too wordy for some people. So
I guess that'd be me.
yeah, and I don't disagree with you. So the city will avoid converting any portion. Are you interested in taking that all out, or?
Well, I guess the way I would read it, top of 14, I would say the city will avoid converting any portion of this property to use for parking of vehicles,
Right.
excepting in the event that future development, and then where it says, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act, period, end of that paragraph.
Oh, taking out, since it is the city's intent that many park users will use this park by walking or bikes, and city has determined that there's already adequate parking on blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like.
I would
Sorry.
agree with that.
I support that too, Terry. Paul, Russ. I'll get it eventually.
Whoever you are.
Not Nancy.
Thank you. I mean, it's really hard to catch these comments on the fly and then go back later and try and remember what you said. So thank you.
Okay. Let's see, then where do I go? Oh, then I go to policy 11.
Policy 11.
Policy 11, item D, item capital D.
Okay.
And this is discussing that particular, it says it's about the ridge path.
Right.
I just say instead of the activities concerning the ridge path as described should be maintained, should be the maintenance of an existing park and therefore treated as a top priority, I say maintain the ridge path as described in policy 8. Period.
In total replacement of that D.
Yeah, I just think, again, there's more words than are necessary, but.
Got it. Yeah, and you know, that's the way this came, and
And then this, the next one has to do with kind of what David was talking about, policy 12, the advisory committee.
Yeah,
In A, I say establish a Gerhart Parks Citizen Advisory Committee, CAC, period. Its bylaws will establish the CAC's authority for oversight of all current and future park properties and park programs within the city on an advisory basis.
okay, I need that sentence from you, or I need to like speed write here.
Okay, well, it's essentially, it's, you know, the top line stays the same, except
Got it.
after CLC, I make a period. Its bylaws will establish the CAC's authority for oversight of all current future park properties and park programs within the city on an advisory basis. I guess my point is, I don't want that committee to have a budget, to have any place within the spending process of the city. I think they need to, if they want to do something, they go to Chad or the city council and say, we need 10 grand to get an arborist in here to cut trees.
Yeah, instead of saying they will be provided an appropriate level of funding.
And then I think the end of that for me, I said the new Gerhart Park CAC, and this follows on an advisory basis, period. The new Gerhart Park CAC will request from the city's operating budget when it is necessary to carry out its duties.
I think that would go over better with the city council, Russ, because it is taking some authority away from the CAC and giving it back to the city council.
Yeah,
Funding.
yeah.
And enforcement.
I just don't know how it would work just logistically, but
Yeah, that's good language. That's very good. Comes a long way from what the committee sent forward, and now I think it's much better with your edits.
okay, well, let's see, where else am I at? Well, I guess under policy 15, vehicles on the beach.
Hold on. Okay, what paragraph?
Well, in small b, subset small b,
Got it.
use the best efforts to oppose any attempt by any other government authority which currently, and then I skip down to which currently prohibits or limits the use of vehicles on any areas of the beach that are within the west of the earth, you know, keep the rest of it from there on out. I'm cutting out the such as the state of Oregon. It just seems like, why are we saying such as? Why don't we just say any other government authority which currently prohibits vehicles on the beach?
No, say it one more time. I thought you said little d, but you said little b. Used its best efforts to oppose any attempt by any other governmental authority.
Period. Yeah, and then jump down to which currently prohibits or limits the use of vehicles on any areas of the beach. So we cut out that little clause about such as the state. And then on that same page, I say note 1 and 2. I know we're trying to have historical relevance, but I don't see why we want to have those there. Notes 1 and 2, I say we get rid of them, because it's just kind of editorializing to me.
Yeah. There's definitely, it takes a few rounds to get through all this.
And then let's see. Then I think I go to page 20. And it's only just a question about the feasibility. It's item D talks about construction of a public restrooms near the western terminus of 10th Street.
Hold on,
And I
I
guess-
don't have any page numbers on my plan. What?
Okay, you don't have page numbers. Okay, well, this has
Policy.
to do with policy 17,
Okay,
long-term goals.
got it,
Long-term goal number D.
got it.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that's, you know, if you have a restroom and this adjoining septic system, it's a monstrous deal.
Yeah, the
it's
10th
all-
Street beach access. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just wondering how feasible that is all. And
Did
so
the
then
group-
I guess you're into 19. You guys you've already talked 19 into a smaller section that may or may not be right. The only other thing I think we ought to get rid of just generally is the appendix. I like the appendix about public input because it's kind of interesting. And
Oh, wait, hold on.
I'm looking at this like 10 years down the road. If somebody's looking at this, trying to figure out what are the parks like, I say that's still kind of interesting because people wanted this, that, the other thing. But I think the 7D on page 42, the demographic info, I just don't see any reason for it.
Pretty much required by the state in their parks plans.
Oh, they are. Oh, okay. Well, to me, it's like a snapshot of a time that may not mean anything, but
Is
if-
that
if
the time
if
in which we wrote the plan, and every parks plan I looked at before we started this had the demographic data in it. It immediately becomes dated, but it gives you a barometer of where we were at the time.
And
Okay.
where we were coming from.
All right, well,
Yeah.
that's the end of me.
Well, that's some good edits, Russ.
All right, thank you.
Wait, one more thing, Russ. In the new appendix on page 42, did you delete something? No.
No, I was just
Yeah.
suggesting that
Okay.
I saying get rid of the demographics, and you said
That's all
that
you said.
it's
Okay,
part of your world, so we won't delete it.
yeah, it's part of the grant,
Yeah.
I asked that same question last meeting, Russ. So what are we having? Okay, so Dawn, do you have anything?
I have a couple things, and I know I'm late to this party,
Nah,
but the section 3.7 about having the park be required leash law. I guess this is more of a discussion. If the rest of the city of Gearhart and the people of Gearhart don't want a leash law, it seems to me to have this one little parcel, a leash law required, where we already have to have dogs under voice command or on a leash, seems to me to kind of create a little bit of a challenge, for enforcement and recognizing that needs to happen. So
It's in the middle of that page for anybody who's looking. It's a one sentence, right?
right, it's in light of the intended use of the park. So if, this, again, if we already have voice command and the city itself is generally not a leash required location, then it seems more of a challenge to have this one little area be that way. So
Yeah,
I-
it was something the
I agree.
committee came up with. I'm just letting you know the background that maybe at some point, leash laws will arrive in Gearhart and maybe never, but this park they finally narrowed it down to say, well, at least in this park where there can be events and things, it might be a good idea. So that's where it came from.
Right. It was somewhat of a compromise with just the feedback we got with the public survey, because there were some people that, wanted at least a park or area of the city that with the leash law. So we thought that was a compromise, just because that's also going to be kind of designated as a play facility for children too. So it might be an area that we might might be able to do that, but I'm indifferent to it as well. So
You're indifferent to it?
I
Well,
I don't have a solid opinion on
Ah.
whether or not it should be considered and to stay in there or not.
Well, I would propose to the commission, this is David, that the less we can edit or change longstanding mores, the easier this will go down with the people who've been here for a while and the people who are new. And I think enforcing a leash law in one area is going to be kind of complicated. Did the police chief chime in on this item?
No, I don't think he was asked either.
Well, I don't think he wants to go over there every time a dog is off leash and stop the speeders on the highway.
Well, it seems to me that we'd be better served to just, if we end up with playground equipment in Trails End Park or City Park, whatever we're going to call it, we should just have it within a fenced compound. Have all the merry-go-rounds and swings and stuff in a little, which would, I think that the old grade school had something similar to that, taking my grandkids down there. And then you could just say, no dogs within the fenced compound. I mean, if that ever happens, I don't know if we should put it in here now, but if we ever build the playground area, we add that to the, possible, the way dogs are allowed within that playground area.
I think that the issue of the dogs on leash, off leash in Gearhart, and depending on our experience, that this is something in the future that City of Gearhart might revisit as we get more and more people, or more and more dogs don't seem to understand sit, stay. And if it was such that at that particular park, after they put in the playground equipment, the people working with that and putting it together deemed it necessary to put a sign up, that it'd be easy just to have a sign put up, please have dogs on leash. If you've got a lot of little kids, because we know dogs don't always behave the same way around small children they do around adults. So to get so specific for one place seems difficult.
I agree, Ginny.
The note after that, Carol, this park, they've given instructions to the city council what they need to do. I don't think that belongs on the master park plan. I would remove
Take it
that
out.
paragraph, that note, please. And on B, on 3.8,
Yeah.
you've got prohibit motorized bicycles. Why is that not a separate letter? Motorized bicycles are prohibited, or, I mean, it's just added, it's like a suggestion, or it's not complete. It's not a complete sentence.
I can explain that. We talked about signage earlier, that it restricts horses or foot traffic only. There was some public input about that, how dangerous it is when bicyclists ride on the ridge path. And so it's been whittled down to say, place signage at key points to advise the public regarding the history of the path and restrictions on its use. Probably should say to foot traffic only. And then I think last time, or in that process, what about motorized bicycles? Because they're so popular now. And those could be a problem on the ridge path, when maybe regular bicycles are not such a big problem. But it's, some of these are notes that I've taken from the conversations that have not quite been resolved. So good eye.
Our conversation last time was that bicycles, children, particularly bicycle on that path. So rather than, why wouldn't it be appropriate, restrictions to foot traffic and
Unmotorized.
motor, I don't know if that's a word.
It is now.
Non-motorized is a word.
Non-motorized.
On.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
think an e-bike is considered a motorized vehicle, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it
So-
is.
No, it's not. It's not. I asked
Oh.
Jeff Bowman and he said, no, it's not.
Well,
Well, a lot of the timber companies in the rest of the state do consider it a motorized vehicle.
yes, the timberlands do. All the timberlands to the east of us consider e-bikes motorized vehicles.
That was actually my other comment was about
Yes,
that
Dawn.
prohibit motorized bicycles. You can ride a motorized bicycle just by pedaling it without activating the motor. So,
Ah,
you can ride your motorized bicycle on the ridge path or anywhere else with your own human power. On the
problem.
street, you can get going a little bit faster. And I've seen people in motorized vehicles going down the bike path without a helmet on 101. So I don't know if it was considered a motorized vehicle around here, then it would, I think, require a helmet, Oregon law for that. So, I mean, I understand the safety issue of you don't want someone ripping through there at 25 miles an hour, but you can also use your motorized bike on the street and then pedal power on the ridge path. So
This is the one place where I get real adamant about. E-bikes can go much faster than 25 miles per hour.
sure.
They are used consistently on places off the road. Remember that helmet wearing in the state of Oregon, though mandated, is mandated for those 16 and under. And when you get up older, it's like a thought process, and they may or may not wear them. But even if they're pedaling, and I understand what you're saying, Dawn, but again, we don't want Jeff Bowman to have to be coming out there and figuring out whether they're using the electric motor on their bike or they're pedaling.
So do we like the term non-motorized bicycle still?
I do.
Jenny and Carol, it's
Yeah,
David. What about something in the middle, sort of like saying that wheeled vehicles will yield to pedestrians in all places? And that way, you're not enforcing motorized or non-motorized or little kids with their big wheels. You're just saying wheeled vehicles yield to pedestrians.
Well, now you're allowing motorized vehicles, they're
Oh.
bicycles.
Well, you're not going to enforceably keep them off of the ridge path. They're going to
No,
be
but
there.
if they're known to be prohibited, then that's at least can be enforced if it becomes a problem or repeated by one person or.
So do you guys realize no matter what iteration of this we produce, it'll be obsolete within 2 years with technology?
That's why they need planners. Modify the plans.
That's right. Dawn, did you have anything else to share?
That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay, all right. So Austin, you've said what you wanted to say, I think. Sharon, do you have something?
Yep, yes, I do.
Okay.
So Terry's comment about the riparian zone wording in policy 19 actually led me back to policy number 4, and I'd like to talk about policy number 4.
What page are you sharing?
Page 12.
Page 12, okay.
So the first Yep, first sentence says the city will manage vegetation on city-owned property within the dunes and along the Mechanic River estuary, is allowed under the city's zoning ordinance, beaches and dunes zone section, blah, blah. So basically what this is saying is that the beaches and dunes overlay zone ordinance will be superimposed on city-owned property in the dunes that is not within the beach and dunes overlay zone. That's the way I'm reading it. So this sentence is expanding that zoning ordinance to non-beaches and dunes overlay zone. Does that make sense?
Let's see.
Is the city parked along the Little Beach area, not in the beaches and dunes overlay?
No,
The whole parks area along the estuary does not lie in the beaches and dunes overlay zone.
right.
So this sentence is effectively making a new zoning ordinance for the non-beaches and dunes overlay zone.
What is it
And
currently?
period. Pardon me?
What is the zoning currently?
Just in the beaches and dunes overlay zone.
No, what is the city-owned portion? What zone is it in?
I can pull that up if you like. on
That's the
map.
good question. The city park land that's east of Ocean, South Ocean is zoned what, Chad?
Park.
It's zoned
Is-
park. Yeah,
Correct.
okay, that's right, duh, it's zoned park. And so that's where we decided the riparian zone setback applies. That's now in the policy 19. Right?
Correct.
All right, so now back to the 4, vegetation in the dunes as managed, to be managed as allowed under zoning ordinance. The neighborhood as allowed by the zoning. Well, I don't. I'm starting to wonder what the point of this policy is if it's already covered by the zoning.
It's not, that's what I'm saying, it's not. So there's a significant part of that parkland in the dunes that is not part of the beaches and dunes overlay zone.
Yeah,
And this sentence is saying, oh, well, we'll just take the beaches and dunes zoning ordinance and apply that to all the rest of the parkland. So it's
basically
creating,
in the estuary.
it's creating a new zoning ordinance for the rest of the parkland. And that was Terry's whole point about putting the riparian zone wording maybe someplace else because it creates a new zone, if you will. It doesn't really, because it's always been in the comprehensive plan. It's
Yeah.
just never been enforced. And there's never been a specific zone ordinance stating riparian zone along the estuary.
Right.
But that's exactly what this policy number 4 is doing. It's creating a new zoning ordinance.
Carol, I'm,
What's that?
Terry, I'm lost. I'm not sure what all this means. Can you explain it to us?
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to think this through. I'm just back to the committee. So vegetation in the dunes on city-owned property. Why does it even say to be managed as allowed under the zoning ordinance? City will maintain vegetation within the dunes. If
It sounds like they're just trying to be consistent with the current management of the rest of the dune system.
I understand what their purpose was, Austin, but
Yeah.
that's creating basically a new zoning ordinance in this
Right.
policy.
And does what does the park zone even say as far as?
Not very much of anything about any of
Right.
this.
Right.
Which is why I wrote policy number 19, because we don't have an overall parks view.
No, we don't.
Back to the drawing board.
Yeah, so I'm having trouble coming to a solution here on the spot,
I,
because
it
that's,
would make,
Go
it
ahead.
would be a little bit easier for me if I could really understand how policy number 4 is actually creating a new zone. So I'm reading through this
Not a
and
new zone, a new zone ordinance.
a new zoning
So
ordinance.
you have a section of that park lies within the beaches and dunes overlay zone.
right.
Yes.
Not all of that park lies within that beaches and dunes overlay zone. The beaches and dunes vegetation zoning wording,
Yeah,
ordinance wording does not apply to the rest of that park, but they're
No.
trying to make it in this policy 4 apply to the rest of the park. That's basically creating a new zoning ordinance for the rest of the park.
well, maybe technically that's not quite right. It's not really creating a new ordinance. It's creating a policy. Yeah, and maybe just like we need to make that reference about the riparian zone setback in the park zone on the estuary. Maybe what you're saying is some of this would actually go into the park zone on the estuary itself, the park zone, rather than in the park plan. Is that what you're saying?
I don't understand what you just said, honestly.
I know, well, this is tough. It's a policy that's trying to clarify how to manage the vegetation on city-owned parks in the dunes and the estuary, okay? That's our first starting point. And then the property owners from Little Beach said, we don't want any of this affecting the estuary that's zoned R1 where they live, right? And
Correct.
then, yeah, and then Jeff Strange said, and I put it in red, that the estuary is already managed by section 3.140, 6.070, and the A2 zone, because it is zoned A2. But that's not just city parkland, it's all land zoned A2, right?
Correct.
And therefore, is the park zone in the estuary, anything we do in the parks on the estuary, is that also subject to A2? It is.
Yeah, but A2's in the water.
Well, that's
We're
mainly in the
talking- we're
water.
talking about-
That's
we're
true.
talking about land.
So now we're back to the 6.070, the riparian, and 3.140, the dunes. Already managed by those. So is Chad around still? Chad,
I hear a plea for help.
I was just wondering how he enforces. So how does the city enforce anything that goes on that park piece that's on the estuary is kind of the question. And maybe environmental protection, preservation of views. Well, yeah, and but see, this number 4 goes to all the bad zoning, so that's the whole ocean front, right?
Well,
City-owned property within all the dunes. So that's where you get back to the views, item C, preservation of scenic views from within the dunes, safety of mitigation of, fire. Go ahead.
Oh, I haven't said anything yet. I'm just pulling up a map here to help
Yeah.
describe what it is that I think Sharon is talking about.
And how you're enforcing it now.
Okay, so yeah, it gets difficult. So can you see my map?
Yep.
Carol?
Yes.
Okay. So, and Sharon, don't hesitate to stop me any way you need to if I start going a little sideways here. This line here, this is a red line on this map. You'll notice this is South Ocean Avenue, this is G Street. And this is the park zone area. And it's zoned park, and it goes all the way around to this little peninsula thing. The beaches and dunes overlay zone it's defined, and it's
Right.
defined using this line right here. This is again the oceanfront building line, or also known as the Palmer line. It was done back in the 70s. It
Chad,
stopped all building. Yes,
It
ma'am?
doesn't go any farther south from that point. Is that right?
It does not go any farther south than that
Okay.
point.
I wasn't sure of that.
So I'm going to just try to use this tool. Hopefully you can see this line. So basically the beaches and dunes overlay zone stops at that line from
Yeah.
the north.
Okay, good.
Huh.
So this area here is not covered by the vegetation rules that apply to the beaches and dunes overlay zone. So go ahead.
And in policy 4, it is saying that BAD should govern that area.
Yeah.
It does, and I
Entitled.
think that that's maybe as simply as that needs to be put as far as a recommendation goes, but then also policy 19 throws in, and I think Terry was talking about this, policy 19 throws in some actual policies about how to manage this particular area differently though, as well. Tree measurement, window painting, that kind of thing is a little different than it is in the current beaches and dunes vegetation policy.
Well, shouldn't we be consistent between, I mean, wouldn't we like that park area to have the same the consistency of the ocean, the dunes in terms of specifying what to do with trees? And I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. Is that logical or not?
Well, it would be working with its neighboring zone.
It's the same landscape, really. They made changes, estuary, but
It's a contiguous area. And I don't understand the Palmer line. Why is that there?
oh, that's a long story.
Oh, well, let's not go there.
The short version is a gentleman named Palmer came up with that line for the state of Oregon to say, "Thou shalt not build any farther west."
Below that line or above that line?
West.
Oh, don't look at my line. I'm talking about the red line is the Palmer line.
Then that red line runs through Surf Pines and all the way up to the river, the Columbia
Yeah.
River.
Right.
Give you an idea.
Oh, okay. That's a good short answer.
Goes around some existing facilities as well. Okay, sorry to distract you, but yeah.
No, that's really important, Chad. So how
That clarifies a lot.
would you prefer to enforce going around the corner there with vegetation? I mean, what do you recommend on a daily basis? Would it work?
Well, currently in the area that's not covered by the beaches and dunes overlay zone, I don't, I kind of treated it similar
Yeah.
to the zone that was set up in the beaches and dunes. I try to maintain that. I could allow more. I could allow cutting of trees up to 12 inches in diameter if I wanted to, but we don't because it's city-owned park, so we have control. The issue comes into is where we talk about some of these homes here that are involved in the park. And these folks for years and years and years have been trimming these trees down, vertical trimming, to maintain their views. Some of the verbiage in 19 would prevent that. And depending on how we look at it, it changes some of the verbiage to the current zone. So yeah, that's the situation right here. And then these homes here are treated a little bit differently by the
So that
new 19.
that helps a lot. The opening paragraph actually makes sense as to what you've actually been and how you've been enforcing it, really kind of extending the beaches and dune zone around to the estuary.
Around the horn, yes.
Okay.
We say instead of as allowed, we say consistent with the cities where it says along the Mechanicsburg River estuary, instead of as, let's say, consistent with the city's zoning ordinance on beaches and dunes, section 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, and that's giving now Chad at least the guidance that he's just been doing without really having any policy that says so.
I think that works a little bit better, Russ.
Why,
Right.
why can we not, under this policy, put a riparian zone wording into this policy?
Maybe that's the place to put it instead of in 19.
What would the wording be?
What's written in 19?
19C. C.
D?
Oh.
C.
And see a riparian zone of city-owned park areas that borders the Mechanicsburg estuary. Okay, actually, that would at least put everything together rather than sticking it in a park zone by itself. Maybe it should go in the park zone too in the future, but at least we know how we're managing it in policy number 4.
So you're talking about the language of policy 19B? Is that what you're talking about?
C as in
C.
Charlie.
C as in Charlie.
Oh, okay.
That looks like a better place to me, Carol.
What is he, 19?
And being more related to A through G.
So what will happen to policy 4 then?
I think that first, let's see, environmental protections, other wildlife. I'm not sure if it needs its own paragraph or if it fits into something here existing. Mechanicsburg River estuary consistent with the city's beaches and dunes. And then you could even add it in the opening statement and the riparian zone of 50 feet at, which I could pull the language from the code or just restate it here as it's in item C of 19.
Will we get to see all these changes before we vote on it?
Oh, God, I have to do this again.
I have another comment. I really feel like C under policy number 4, that the wording in the parentheses should be removed.
I disagree completely.
Well, that's why I put this question mark in here. retain or remove. So now this planning commission should make that, I would take a vote on that if I were you.
So I'm advocating that C can remain preservation of scenic views. That wording remains, but the wording in the parentheses is removed.
I disagree completely.
Do you want to make a motion, Sharon?
Sure. I move that the wording in policy number 4, letter C, the wording preservation of scenic views is retained, and the wording between the parentheses is removed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sharon has moved and David has seconded on policy 4 under C, that the line in parentheses, including views of the ocean and beaches, as well as views of the dunes themselves, be removed. Is there further discussion? Yes, Austin.
Is the concern over, I guess, what is the concern over that? I want to hear what is the concern over the parentheses portion of it? I just want to hear the viewpoint of the motion person made the motion.
Okay, Austin, is there someone like Sharon? Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. My concern is that scenic views vary from person to person and what they feel are scenic views. So I don't think that should be dictated or narrowed down. I also, as I brought up in our last meeting, definitely don't think that the city should be involved in any kind of efforts or guarantees that anybody will have ocean view from their house. I don't think that the city can legally support being involved in guaranteeing that. I think that sets us up as a city for lawsuits. And I don't think that the city should put any monies towards helping maintain ocean views either as a taxpayer.
Can I hear Terry's point of view on this?
Well, what I take into account is in the first paragraph, when you guys wrote this, you say, while considering and balancing various, sometimes competing public interests. And I think you really did a great balancing act. I don't agree with the statement that nobody wants their taxes to maintain the items A through G. I think if you went to the people who do have views, who live on ocean along the estuary, who pay more taxes than anybody else, they would be more than happy to tell you that they wish that their tax dollars had been spent starting back in 1970 to do the work that's outlined in A through G. And it's my understanding now that the people who want to really, what they're doing is candling their trees. They're not chopping down the trees. They're not topping the trees. They meet with Chad. They apply for a permit. Chad goes out, looks at what is going to be done and allows it to be done. And I just don't think that the city's done a good job of managing their trees. And I think that money needs to be spent to do that. If you look at an aerial view that goes back to 1970, there's hardly a tree on the dunes. And now the dunes are all being reclaimed by a forest. And I feel very strongly about that. Excluding views of ocean and beaches as well as views of the dunes themselves, I think is part of the beauty and history of Gerhardt. It'd be ridiculous to exclude that. But I'm only one vote.
Well, this is Russ. Now, the way I'm reading that, even if we eliminate the parenthesis part of that, this C still reads preservation of scenic views from within the dunes and from neighboring properties.
Right.
So does it not? I mean, the parenthesis is essentially repeating what's already in there without it. But
It's
I
a
do agree with Terry that, I mean, those people are paying 5 times the tax than we are, and they deserve some consideration. But, and just speaking to the forest, there's a house there, well, the map was up, but the house that's out on the very point where we were looking at that red line, I worked on that house in the mid 80s, and there were about 5 little pine trees that were waist high out there, and what we're talking about in the city park. So to Terry's point, whether it's the 70s or the 80s, there was hardly anything out there that was a tree. Not that, I mean, you know, Mother Nature is reclaiming it with trees, so it certainly is part of the process. I don't disregard that, but it's not a redwood forest that's been there for 5,000 years or anything like that. But anyway.
Well, Russ, I disagree that this language is redundant. What it is clarification, and it's just adding clarity to what can be a scenic view. So if you say preservation of dunes or views, this just gives clarification. And I don't think that the trees are reclaiming. Mother Nature's not reclaiming. Those trees are volunteer trees. They're not natural to that part of the dunes. Just like Scott.
I disagree with that statement, Terry. If you look at the dune ridges in our area and you look what the natural succession is that ultimately trees grow up between the dune ridges.
I guess we just have a difference of an opinion, and that's okay. To me, it's people are just candling their trees to maintain their views. They're not doing any damage to the trees. They're not doing any damage to the environment. And it would be ridiculous to take that away from them, in my opinion.
Oh, this is David, and I'd like to channel Carl Anderson and call the question. If I may.
I understand that, David. Thank you. But I'm going to do something that someone's not going to approve of. Terry, do you mean candling that they're trimming out branches? Not a term I'm familiar with.
No, we have these pine trees in our backyard, and every spring they call them candles. They shoot up about 6 inches, and what they do is they pop those off. And what that does is prevent the tree to get higher and higher and higher and bushier and bushier. But the trees still stay natural. They still stay beautiful. And it doesn't do any harm to them at all.
Okay. I just need a clarification of the term because I'm not a tree expert. Okay, David has called for the vote, called the question. The motion is that on policy number 4, restating it, policy C, it would be reworded to eliminate, in parentheses, including views of the ocean and beaches, as well as views of the dunes themselves, excuse me. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Hey.
I hear
No.
Russ, David, Terry, nay. Don,
Hey,
Austin,
Nay.
Sharon? All right, so it does not pass. Okay. Anything else? This has been a long
I think I've got a really short comment for you, Jenny.
Well, thank you.
Policy number 4,
4,
line item B as in Baker.
yes.
The wording needs to be cleaned up a little bit in that sentence if snowy plover is eliminated.
You are correct.
And others should go out.
And I'm not gonna say anything more than that. It just needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Okay, and preservation of other wildlife habitat, is that what you?
No, I would say just environmental protection and preservation of wildlife habitat.
Okay,
Leave it there.
all right,
How's that?
And
okay.
maybe we want to move on from this for now.
Yes, yes, we do.
I think essentially 3 hours working on this. You know, these guys have done a terrific job putting this together, and you can see how we, as experienced as we are having a lot of effort going into just a few sentences. And these guys have done pages. So I'm very impressed with what's come up. And I hope they're not taking offense at us nitpicking a lot of things.
I hope so too. It is part of our responsibility to look over it. That is what the planning commission does. We look at from a different viewpoint, looking down to the future, and that's what planning and
Yes.
it never hurts to have extra sets of eyes looking at things for wording and things like that. Even though Carol may be going nuts at this point.
Well, she's probably nodding off.
I know.
I know. And not even close. How could I with all this conversation?
Okay. So Carol, I need direction from you at this point.
All right, well, you've made a number of changes. I think anything that was questionable has been voted on, and everything else has been, clarification and cleanup and reduction. So I can again take it back and bring it back again next month and kind of compress the council's time to March. Next month, you thought the playground equipment was far in the future is actually a conditional use permit for the Centennial Park playground equipment.
No playground equipment, no.
Yeah, so that's on your agenda right now. And do you want me to bring this back in its next iteration?
Okay, what we have to have, I believe, is a motion to that effect. Am I right, Carol?
If you like, just if there's any disagreement, which I don't think there is, everybody want this to come back?
We can have consensus, right? Consensus is legitimate. All right, fellow commissioners, do we have consensus that we would like Carol to bring this back? We've given her a lot of input tonight. There's a few gray areas in there that she needs to just clean up the wording on, and we will have to vote on this next month though, because she has to take it to the city council in order to be within the grant restrictions that allow this to be put together. Is there consensus to have Carol bring it back to us in February?
I can say.
Okay, so Carol, good luck.
Carol, there is one more typo in item E of policy 4, and I'll let you find it.
Oh, thanks.
So
My
we're not
eyes
going
are
to
crossed.
discuss it or argue about it. There's one more typo in line E as in Everett.
Well, thank you, David.
There.
Oh, all right. And if you, in reviewing it, any things tonight that you see something such as another typo or a spelling error or words out there dangling, let's get those to Carol before we meet the next time, rather than when we meet. That way she can fix all of those before we get it.
We can do that by email.
We can do it by email. And Carol, though she may not be residing in the state of Oregon, gets email just fine at her place. Okay, moving forward, we have no unfinished business. We have no new business. Concerns of the commission for tonight? Is there anything?
Nope.
Okay, I skipped over reports of the commissioner and the goals list. I don't know. I guess I just
We
didn't
can take
want,
that up.
I didn't want to discuss it tonight. We are at 8:36. I don't think there's any changes to the goals list or anything.
Not at this point.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Now's the time to yell and scream at me if you have problems.
You've done a great job.
Hearing no yelling and screaming, it is 8:36. We will see you in February. Have a great rest of January and be safe out there, please. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.